going to go into then this. So we're talking about mom time. We're talking about feeding your heart. So now that's another level. That mom time is the beginning of that. You know, making sure you take that little bit of time, like I said, to fill your cup so that you're ready to share and be on and do the things you need to do with your family and with those around you. But this feeding your heart has to do with you educating yourself, spending some time, you learning something new, something that fills you up and then can kind of overflow and trickle down to your children. They will feel the influence of that learning that you're experiencing. So what kinds of things, what's something new, something different that you've learned this week that you can share with us? Kyra?
I've been teaching myself the violin. We bought one in the spring, and so I've dabbled with it a little bit, but over the last couple of weeks, I've just been trying to do it more. If I can't get out the violin because my toddler's around, then I'll just sit at the piano and practice that more. And I find that whenever I sit down at the piano, my kids are like, "Oh, Mom, I want to turn." So I can see the example that I set influences them to want to. My mom used to play clarinet in high school, and they found her old clarinet, so they brought that out. So my daughter's been pulling that out and kind of teaching herself a little bit of that too. So.
That's awesome. I love that. And music is such an important part of our teaching and of the what we want to feed to our children. So that's awesome, Kyra. Good example. Wonderful. Okay, other mamas want to share something new you learned this week or this month or something? I know you're learning stuff. Everybody's so shy. And remember the 30-second rule. It takes 30 seconds to process a question. So you're thinking, it's going through your mind, oh yeah, she asked me about something I learned, and I probably have learned something, and if I think back, you know, mom's memory's what, like, I don't know, anywhere 5 minutes, 30 minutes long, something like that. I went and visited a friend this morning that just had a baby 2 days ago and got to hold that little baby, and I was asking her about something about last night, the mom, and she's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked that question. That wasn't fair. I said, how about 5 minutes ago? Can you tell me how he was doing then? Anyway, we were working on breastfeeding. So it's not funny how you as a mama kind of have to relearn that every time with every child. You know, it's like you've forgotten how it all worked. It just is. It's different with every child, you know, and it's not you know what you're doing, really. You start second guessing yourself, but it's, I tell them this is your first lesson. This is the first thing that you're teaching your baby. You're teaching your baby how to, you know, latch on, how to nurse properly. So you're fine. You just need to know that you're fine. Anyway, all of our lives, we have these natural learning experiences with our kiddos. And the things that we bring into our lives, into our heads, into our hearts, those are the things that are going to have such a big impact on our children. We don't always realize that the influence of just those little things that we're doing every day really do have a big impact on their lives. I think probably if you are able to kind of clear your mind a little bit, you can think of some examples of something that you were busy doing, and then you see your child mimicking that in some way, you know, or just wanting to do that with you, or they start maybe doing a better job. I mean, it does a better job at it. I should finish my sentences. But it doesn't matter how old they are. You know, as little toddlers, we find them mimicking, doing what we're doing, but also our teenagers, our young adults. You know, if we are maybe if we've been a little bit lax on a habit that we ought to be doing, like maybe our scripture study, something like that, or serving others. And if we start working on that and not announcing it, not saying anything, but just kind of trying to let them catch us doing it, right? Is that, somebody says that, maybe TJ Ed, but let them catch us doing good things. That's incredible, the influence and impact that has on our children's lives. You really will see them. They may try to make sure you don't catch them doing that thing that they're imitating, you know, that you were doing, because they want to feel like it was their own decision, you know, and their own choice. But you will see that. you'll see that happening with your kiddos. So think a little more. Any examples of something new that you've learned or tried or experienced this week? Or even maybe one of those examples, something that you did and your children saw you doing, and you were able to make that little bit of an impact on your kiddos. So just think about it.
So I have something.
Great.
This is my first time here.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tasia Thompson. There is a group called the Wishing Well in our area, and they provide things for foster children. And so I am part of a group. It's like a bunch of seamstresses, essentially. Anyway, they provided me with stockings, and I've been decorating them so that the children can have Christmas stockings. And I started doing it, and all my kids came around me and they're like, can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? And pretty soon, like, it was a giant mess, but we had stuff spread out all over. Everyone was doing their thing. And it was a good reminder that you don't always have to be like, okay, now we're going to do this. Like I've tried to do the whole, now it's My America Storybook time, and it's been a spectacular fail. And we've done notebooking before, and I just think it's because I had it all hyped up in my mind. This is going to be amazing. And it super wasn't. And so it was a good reminder for me that maybe I just need to do it by myself in a place where everyone can see, maybe pop some popcorn, and those who are interested will come and have a better experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's such a good example. Look at those two examples you had of the one where you weren't trying, you didn't have little packets laid out for each child with the supplies they needed to help you make these stockings, you know, where on the other side of it with My America Storybook, you were ready, you know, had it all, you know, whatever you did set up. But anyway, you had these expectations, and man, expectations are the things that will bring us down. They will disappoint us every time. I'm still trying to learn that lesson. Just let them go. Let go of the expectations, because it's never going to go the way that you expected. But Lindsay, I dropped by her house the other day, and Lindsay actually could share. I'll put her on the spot all the time, but Lindsay could share the thing that happened with her My America Storybook. When she told us about it in the beginning, when she was talking with her daughter Sarah about it, she had even said, just Sarah and I are going to do it, I think. I don't even think we're going to involve the little kids. And so, Lindsay, you want to share? What I saw was amazing, and the enthusiasm of the kids. So anyway, I'll let you talk, and if you miss anything, I'll add it in.
Yeah, that's the fun part, is seeing how excited they are to share what they've done with other people, because sometimes they'll just complain about it or something at home, and then when they get really excited to show it off. But they actually haven't complained. They've been super excited. The first couple of days, it was just Sarah and I, and then I started sort of bribing. Like, if you sit down and do your notebook page, there's a snack for those who are notebooking. You know, we have cookies or whatever. And then, so they're like, okay, fine, we'll notebook just for the cookies. And then I stopped doing snacks. I don't even have a snack. And they're like, who are we learning about today? What are we going to do for notebooking? When are we doing our notebooking? And they're all excited. And so, yeah, it's so unexpected to me. Like, I would have never guessed that. And it's all for my kids, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So like, even the little kids come and they cut out their pictures and they glue them on and they're done. And that's it. But
yeah. Well, and the 7-year-old, Max, he runs up to me. He's like, Sister Gabadis. And he shows me his book, and then he kind of realizes, oh, I really don't have much written in my book. And it was almost like he was a little bit embarrassed of that. And I thought, oh, well, that might get him doing it, because then he'll have something to show me next time, you know. And then he pulls out his big sister's book. Well, she's got something on everything, and, you know, starts showing me the pages in her book. And it was awesome. But just the excitement and enthusiasm about this thing that is actually, it's work. It's a wonderful, obviously very rewarding kind of work, but on another day, or presented in a different way, the way we usually do, the way we've been trained to, the way we think we should, is here's this wonderful thing I have to offer you, and I'm going to let you do this, and you're going to love it. That just seems to backfire on us most of the time. I was thinking when you brought up the cookies about my sister-in-law who's here, and Kristen, I'm going to put you on the spot just a tiny bit. About your scripture study, ensign, conference talk kind of study. Your kids, that's a very positive thing for them. And it's a long period of time, but there is kind of a little just built-in reward that I think makes it good family time. I mean, for the Gavidises, a bowl of ice cream, it's magic. That's true.
So, and actually haven't been doing the bowl of ice cream as much lately. That's kind of with the older kids. So I'll go back a little bit, and Lori probably doesn't even know this part. We decided when our two oldest, who are now 20, almost 29 and 26, when they were really little, we decided that once they turned 8, every Sunday evening, we got a copy of the Ensign, the conference talk Ensign, every May and November for each member of the family. And so once they turned 8, they would get to stay up a little later on Sunday evenings, and we would read a conference talk from the previous conference, and we would mark things and stuff. And our third child, when she was like 6 and 7, she kept asking, when do I get to start? When do I get to? It was this big thing for her. She was so excited. And then even our twins, who are our youngest, it was when they turned 8, it was a big deal to them, because it wasn't something that they had, it was something that they looked forward to. And I remember our daughter-in-law saying at one point, she and our son were newly married when the third one was excited about starting on the Ensign. And our daughter-in-law said, so I guess if you just make everything into something you get to do, then it's a lot, then you don't have to, I don't remember exactly how she worded it, but it was never something that we had to say, oh, you have to do this, because, but then as they got a little older, we felt like we wanted them not just to sit and read it together as a family and mark it as we went. We wanted them to read it ahead of time, and then instead of reading it as a family on Sunday evenings, everybody would just share something that they learned from it. And so those that had marked it ahead of time, when we started that, those that had marked it ahead of time got a larger bowl of ice cream. Or I think we even said their bowl of ice cream depended on on if they had read it ahead of time.
On their preparation.
So, on their preparation. If they were prepared, they got a bowl of ice cream that night.
Yeah, there you go.
And I just want to add one other thing. Yeah. I have a really good friend who told me once, it is not bribery, it is a covenant. If you do this, then I will do this.
I love that. Oh, that feels so much better, doesn't it? Okay.
Yes.
I'm in a covenant with you guys. If you are prepared, ye shall not fear, and you shall get ice cream.
That's right.
There we go. That's a lesson we could teach our kids. That's not going to hurt anybody. Anyway, I love that. And the thing is that when their kids, my nieces and nephews, talk about this time, it's a positive. It's not this, we gotta go do this, have our time to study. It's a positive for them. So I love that. Okay, any other mamas want to share something that you've learned, something new that you have learned or experienced or tried this week, or something that you have modeled for your children and kind of what the outcome of that was? And if you don't, it's totally fine. You can be thinking about that and then kind of thinking, oh, I'll start looking for that this next week. I'll start kind of paying attention to see if I notice those things.
I'll share another thing if nobody else is going to. So going back to the notebooking idea, I'm reading a biography about Florence Nightingale right now, and I read a quote in it of hers that I really loved, that something about how she was called by God. And it was, as a 17-year-old, she heard and her quote was something like, I heard a voice and I knew that God had called me to the work, or something like that, of nursing and improving the nursing conditions and the hospitals and all of that. So the next day, I read it one night, and the next day I got my notebook out, and while my kids were doing other things, and I cut out a picture. I printed a picture of her and put it in my notebook and filled out a little page about her. And one of my daughters said, I read that book. I want to do a page on her too. And so, and she did that as I was starting to print it. So I printed, and then my other daughter said, I think I read it too. So I ended up printing a thing for each of them. But I've had many experiences where I do that. And sometimes a child joins in, sometimes they don't. But the whole purpose is setting up a lifelong learning environment that you can keep learning when you're 50 years old. It's not, you don't have to stop when you are 18 and you're done with high school, or you're 22 and you're done with college. You can keep learning. And so it's not a failure if your children don't join in right away.
Right.
They are learning as they watch you do it.
Of course, absolutely. I love that. And I don't know if any of you, how many of you read Marlene's post yesterday, just yesterday morning. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. I copied and pasted or whatever, put it on my page. So I'm going to share it with you because it kind of goes along with this. Okay, so she says, I have seen several posts recently in this group and others from moms who are frustrated because their kids won't engage in the activities they wish they would engage in, whether it is art or music or reading or notebooking or even being out in nature. Of course, it's hard to see exactly what is going on. There are usually many factors at play. But as I was pondering this morning, so again, this is Marlene Peterson. As I was pondering this morning, the thought that settled on me was that often we may be exerting a bit of compulsion without even realizing it. And what you may be getting is pushback from that. They have no ownership of their learning because you are doing all of the designing, even when that design is good. So that's super, super interesting. One solution as I see it is not to increase the force, but so this is where it is addressing what we're talking about right now, but put the oxygen mask on yourself and breathe in deeply for a while. Are you enjoying being out in nature? Are you enjoying stories and notebooking? Do you like to learn new things? Have you taken up painting or reading a book for pleasure or digging out an answer to a question you came up with? If you don't enjoy these activities and someone insisted you do them, how would you react? And I think that's a question I try to ask myself all the time. What am I asking this person to do, and how would I feel about it if it were asked of me? And is there a different way I could present it or something? Anyway, going back to Marlene's quote, she says, it is no guarantee they will follow, like Kristen was just talking about. That isn't the purpose. You can't use their compliance as the measuring stick of your success. I think that is a huge quote that you want to write down and remember. You cannot use their compliance, your children's compliance, as the measuring stick of your success. The measuring stick is what is going on inside of you. The richer your personality, the greater your influence. It's so easy to shift our focus on our kids and neglect our own hearts. I mean, that's what we do most of the time. And we think that we're doing this absolutely wonderful, thing. We're making this huge sacrifice, and we're sacrificing ourselves, our sleep, our nurturing, our feeding, our studying, our growth, our everything for them. But she's saying that is not the thing. It is so easy to shift our focus on our kids and neglect our own hearts. And yet, as you tend to your own, you will see more clearly. Your enthusiasm for learning will spill out more naturally. You'll feel less stress. And she says, and I love this, I can already hear your responses, but our kids have to do such and such. She says, do they? My experience is 95% of the stuff we stress ourselves out over really doesn't matter much in the long haul. If your kids have to pass state exams and you are worried about compliance, does that translate to you that they have to be in the 90th percentile? That would be my stress. about that? Or can you be okay with them squeaking by in the 13th percentile? And that kind of made me nervous. I thought, oh, I don't know if I could do that, but that's the right thing, isn't it? Can you be okay with them squeaking by in the 13th percentile because they are not yet developmentally ready for certain tasks? Yeah, you could continue to just, try to cram those things into their little heads, or you could just wait until they're developmentally ready and you prepared their hearts and it just comes in because they want it. They're ready for it and they can do it. She continues, there are so many ways to learn and so many things to learn. It doesn't have to look like one way. Build relationships first. Go where your child is, not where you think he should be. And don't be hard on yourselves. So she has a little PS, but if that means your child is locked up in his room alone for hours with electronics while you're feeding your heart, that's another conversation. Probably not the ideal way. And then she says, kind of how she presents anything out there, just some thoughts to consider. If they fit, use them. If not, blow them away like chaff in the wind. So I love that. What are your thoughts about that? Anybody? Did that resonate with anybody? Maybe help you feel a little bit more relaxed, less pressure, less stress, more pressure, more stress? What do you think?
So I thought it was funny that she mentioned the 13th percentile because my son just did some state testing this week, and it's just to test their reading, and he's in 2nd grade and he can read very beginner books, but it's definitely not on the 2nd grade level. So he was in like the 3rd percentile for certain things because I know he just hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you okay with that? I mean, did that kind of help you go, okay, I don't have to stress about that?
Yeah, it's something that I just know that's where he's at, so it didn't surprise me, and it doesn't affect, I mean, I always go back to the fact that there's kids in public school that do that poorly. They have a teacher there, and that's just where they're at developmentally. So it's not because I'm homeschooling him or unschooling him. That's just where he's at. And it is kind of tough. I definitely don't share those stats with like extended family, but yeah, it's just where we're at. However, we have considered doing things differently in the future for him so that he doesn't have to go through that and have that measuring stick as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. That's great. All right, so I'm moving on to the next point, which is the eyes or no eyes, which I know is kind of obscure, but it's a story that I read this week while I was studying and preparing for this. So I'm having so much fun. I have to tell you, this is my first year not having any of my kiddos to teach, which I was not looking forward to, because that was going to be sad. Because I have loved all these years of teaching them all. And so my last one graduated in May, and I thought, what am I going to do with my time? And Heavenly Father helped me with that. So now I'm busy studying and feeding my heart in new ways, and I love it. So here's the story that I ran across, and I'm going to share parts of it, and then I'll share with you why. So this is a story. It's part of a letter. It's something that's on Well Educated Heart that Marlene put on there. It's entitled Letter to the Boys and Girls from Charles Kingsley. And he included in here this story. He was telling the children that when he was young, there were none of these wonderful books and stories and things printed like there are now. And the books that he had access to were quite dull, and the pictures in them were ugly and mean. Well, you have your choice of books without number, clever, amusing, and pretty, as well as really instructive. Anyway, so he goes on and he said that he read this story in a book. Well, he prefaces it by saying, mere reading of wise books will not make you wise men. You must use for yourselves the tools with which books are made wise, and that is your eyes and ears and common sense. And he said, among those very stupid old-fashioned books, boys' books, was one which taught me that principle, and therefore I am more grateful to it than if it had been as full of wonderful pictures as all the natural history books you ever saw. And the book he was talking about was called Evenings at Home. And in it was a story called Eyes and No Eyes. And he said it was a story about two boys. And the two boys came walking into their classroom, and their teacher was engaging them in discussion and asked them about their walk. Had been the end of the holiday, and they had spent their time out of doors, and they were coming back into the school. And he says, well, Robert, where have you been walking this afternoon? Said Mr. Andrews to one of his pupils at the close of a holiday. Oh, Robert had been to Broom Heath and round by Camp Mount and home through the meadows, but it was very dull. He hardly saw a single person. He had much rather have gone by the turnpike road. Presently in comes Master William, the other pupil, dressed, I suppose, as wretched boys used to be dressed 40 years ago, in a frill collar and skeleton monkey jacket and tight trousers buttoned over it and hardly coming down to his ankles, and low shoes which always came off in sticky ground, and terribly dirty and wet he is. But he never says. He says, I'm sorry, I just read that wrong. He says, I never had such a pleasant walk in my life. And he has brought home his handkerchief full of curiosities. He has got a piece of mistletoe and wants to know what it is. And he has seen a woodpecker and a wheat ear, which is a bird, and gathered strange flowers on the heath, and hunted a peewit because he thought its wing was broken, till of course it led him into a bog, and very wet he got. But he did not mind it, because he fell in with an old man cutting turf, who told him all about turf cutting and gave him a dead adder. That's a snake, right? Is an adder a snake? Okay. So he got a dead snake. That's what every girl wants, to bring home in their pocket. But for boys, kind of magical. And then he went up a hill and saw a grand prospect and wanted to go again and make out the geography of the country from Carey's old county maps, which were the only maps in those days. And then, because the hill was called Camp Mount, he looked for a Roman camp and found one. And then he went down to the river and saw 20 things more, and so on, till he had brought home curiosities enough and thoughts enough to last him a week. Whereon our Andrews, who seems to have been a very sensible old gentleman, tells him all about his curiosities. So he gets the answers to all of the things that he brought in and wants to know about. And then it comes out, if you believe it, that Master Williams has been over the very same ground as Master Robert, who saw nothing at all. So, whereon Mr. Andrews says, wisely enough, in his solemn, old-fashioned way, so it is. One man walks through the world with his eyes open, another with his eyes shut. And upon this difference depends all the superiority of knowledge which one man acquires over another. I loved that. I love that example, the two stories. But then he goes on and he says, I beg all good boys and girls among you to think over this story and settle in your own minds whether they will be eyes or no eyes, whether they will, as they grow up, look and see for themselves what happens, or whether they will let other people look for them or pretend to look and dupe them and lead them about, the blind leading the blind, till both fall into the ditch. Which I couldn't help but think about social media, the news today, people talking today. That was just incredible. Whether they will grow up and look and see for themselves what happens, or whether they will let other people look for them or pretend to look for them and dupe them and lead them about, the blind leading the blind, till both fall into the ditch. And then he goes on and says, I say good boys and good girls, not merely clever boys and girls or prudent boys and girls, because using your eyes or not using them is a question of doing right or doing wrong. God has given you eyes, and it is your duty to God to use them. If your parents tried to teach you your lessons in the most agreeable way by beautiful picture books, would it not be ungracious, ungrateful, and altogether naughty and wrong to shut your eyes to those pictures and refuse to learn? And is it not altogether naughty and wrong, and this goes for mamas too, to shut your eyes to those pictures, to refuse to learn from your Father in heaven, the great God who made all things, when he offers to teach you all day long by the most beautiful and most wonderful of all picture books, which is simply all things which you can see and hear and touch, from the suns and stars above your heads to the mosses and insects at your feet. It is your duty to learn his lessons, and it is your interest likewise. God's book, which is the universe, and the reading of God's book, which is science, can do you nothing but good and teach you nothing but truth and wisdom. God did not put this wondrous world about your young souls to tempt or to mislead them. If you ask him for a fish, he will not give you a serpent. If you ask him for bread, he will not give you a stone. So use your eyes and your intellect, your senses and your brains, and learn what he is trying to teach you continually by them. So, did you like that as much as I liked that? I loved that. So I put in my note, in my margin there, eyes or no eyes. Like this is something we need to discuss. So what are your thoughts? Again, 30-second rule. Process, process, process. Don't worry, don't be uncomfortable by the silence, but think. What did you think about it? Did it cause you to kind of maybe make a new commitment to yourself about your own learning, your own attitude about learning new things?
Well, I made me realize that when I'm out and about with my kids, we went on a walk this last week, and a lot of it was, ooh, look at this, and notice this, and look what I see, and what do you see? And I realized as you were reading that that's kind of just what we started doing. I think it started with Marlene, and maybe it was the John Muir laws that I noticed. It reminds me of.
Oh yeah.
And so, and since then, I've been injecting that into just our everyday life. And what do you notice? And when we read stories, it's not always about, well, here's what was said, but I ask my kids, well, what did you learn from it? Or what do you remember from it? Or what was your favorite part? And letting them each share those that want to, and then sharing what I noticed or what it reminds me of as well.
Wonderful. I love that. And it's wonderful if we let our children lead, those observations. But that also means us stopping sometimes when we didn't plan on stopping.
Yeah, that walk took a lot longer than my husband wanted. He was like, okay, let's go. And the kids are like, no, I want to take pictures of this, and I want to be able to remember this and stuff. So it went a lot slower than we initially wanted, but it was good.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. I love that. Any other mamas think of something while we were chatting?
At the beginning, I don't remember what you said, but it reminded me of a quote in a book that I'm reading. I'm reading The Walking Drum by Louis L'Amour.
I love that book, The Spanish Moors.
It is so full of all these just golden nuggets, and I've been notebooking. Like, I have all these marks of quotes that I need to write down. But it's about in the middle of the book, and it says, a book is less important for what it says than for what it makes you think. And I love that, and I love perspective, how you can go through the same thing and one person thinks it's beautiful and the other doesn't notice anything. So it's less about what's there and more about how it makes you feel and what it makes you think.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Very good. I love that book. I love Louis L'Amour, actually. And The Walking Drum and The Lonesome Gods, his 2 historical biographies, are just fabulous. They're really good. Hi, Ida. Welcome. Okay, so anything else? I love that you're reading. I love that you're reading. Some of us are listening to music. Some of us are going out into nature. Some of us are looking at beautiful art and using that with our families. What else? What else are you doing for you? It's funny how moms don't even often realize what it is that you're doing that is nurturing you. But I think it's, while we're doing this heart learning and we're trying to focus on this, you need to maybe take a minute at the end of the day and say, okay, what did I do where I was feeding my heart today? What were those activities? And, it doesn't hurt at the start of the day to kind of you can even, that can be part of your prayer. What can I work on? What should I do? Help me to find some ideas, think of some things, but to include that in your life and make sure that you're doing that. Yes, Ida.
So I was like, I've been doing the Well-Educated Heart. I've been going through the stuff.
Such a good girl.
It's great, but it's also overwhelming. And I'm sure that other people have felt the same thing, but it's like, I'm like, okay, this is all amazing, and I want to do all of it, but how can I do all of it? And trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to fit all this stuff in? And then it's just and then I had a little bit of a meltdown. Maybe a little bit of a panic attack, because I was like, I can't do it. It's too crazy. Anyways, and then I had to take a step back and be like, okay, get some perspective, I guess. And I think I loved what Marlene said about, this should be the curriculum of you, not somebody else's. And I'm like, okay, so what does that look like? I'm still working on that. But I just was like, you know what? We're just going to start and do things. And we started doing different things. And if it doesn't work, we throw it out and start with something else. And trying to do things for myself where I'm educating my heart, I guess. And that is a little bit hard too, because I didn't know where to start. I do lots of reading all the time, but trying to read things a little bit deeper and think about them and process them more. So I've been trying to do that, and even just listening to the stories, I have 3 boys that are my 3 oldest are boys, and 12 and 10 and 8. And so doing lots of writing is not something that they love doing. And so doing all the journaling, they're like, yeah, this is great. They do like to color and cut and do some stuff, but they get a little bit burnt out. My oldest is pretty good, but the other 2, especially the 8-year-old, no. So I was realizing, you know what, we can do My American Storybook, and we can just listen to the stories, because it's great, and they might not do a lot the first time, and maybe we can go through it again and they'll get it, next time around or something, So I started doing that. That's helpful. And then yesterday I listened to the thing about nature and the guy that does the nature journaling.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I used to do art all the time, and I haven't done it in several years because I just have kids and I never had time. So I was like, yeah. And then also when I get out my art, then all my kids are like, hey Mom, can I do that? Can I do that? And I'm like, no, get away. And that's not very nice, but it's for me, it's something that's super relaxing, and I like to do it and I enjoy it. And then when I have kids climbing on me and wanting to get into the paint and knocking over my water or whatever it is, then I start to freak out a little bit. So I just decided yesterday, I was like, I'm going to do some art. I'm going to get it out because I love it. And I'm not going to stress out if the kids are there. I'm just going to say, Mom's doing art right now. You guys can go play and do something else maybe. And maybe another time you can do art. But right now, Mom's doing art. And so I did that. And they were all super interested and wanted to comment about the art and all of that, which I want them to be interested in it. And I'm trying to nurture that. But at the same time, I'm first maybe just me. then we can do you. Is that I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, there are several moms here that are experienced with Well-Educated Heart and with doing these things. So I'm going to throw that out to them.
Great.
To discuss that a little bit.
Please share your knowledge.
Yeah, and I know both Kristen and Lindsay have experience with that, and there might be other moms too, but I'm going to call on them first to share.
Okay, I can relate to the being overwhelmed, because I remember thinking, okay, we need to learn about China and India and all these Scandinavian countries all this month. We have to get it all in, because this is the only month for these countries.
Right.
And you want to do it all, because as a mom, like you're excited to learn it, and you find these books, these crafts, and these foods, and there's so many good things, and it warms your heart, and you want to pass that on, and all these things. But this is the first year that I can say that I haven't been overwhelmed by all of it, because I decided just to pick and stick with like one thing. And then if that doesn't work, like you said, throw it out, maybe pick another thing. But just start like you did, just do one thing at a time. So this year I decided, okay, I'm gonna pick one country for each month, and we'll do the My America Storybook like you're doing, and just kind of simplify and just do a couple things. But I know it's so hard to do that.
It's so many good things. How do I do?
So many good things. So I've always been overwhelmed by that. How do you fit in all the good things? But we just have to start somewhere. I have a little one asking questions now, so I'll pass it on.
Okay, so as Ida was talking, I'll tell you a story that came to my mind. There's a lady that I know who actually graduated from high school a year after my mom. They went to the same high school, which wouldn't seem that interesting, except that I live in Utah and my mom grew up in Idaho, and this lady is in my neighborhood. And so she and my mom just happened to go to high school together, and now she's in my neighborhood. This very classy, well put together, you know, everything always coordinated and perfect. And she was telling a story once about how she decided to pray one day and ask in her prayer what she needed to be working on. And so she knelt down and she was saying her prayers, and as she prayed, she asked that question, and immediately she was overwhelmed and flooded with a list of everything she was doing wrong, every single thing in her life that, you know, it just went on and on. And so she quickly ended her prayer and just went, forget it, I can't do all that. It was a couple of years later that she realized that was the adversary. And he is always the first to jump in. Whenever there is something good introduced to us, he always is the first one. He wants to get his nose in first. And so he jumps in, and he's the one that gives us the overwhelm. And so whenever we have those feelings of overwhelm, we need to pray and then listen, like Lori's been talking about listening, and listen, and the feelings of overwhelm might even intensify at first, and we need to just ignore those, push them aside, and wait a minute. And then the peaceful, gentle thoughts that come to our mind, we follow those. And I loved what Lindsay said about picking one thing. You know, honestly, one thing that I like to think about a lot that helps me get over the overwhelm is, what if my kids were in public school? What would they be learning about any of this in public school? Nothing, zero. So any little tidbits we throw to them are great. And we don't need to feel overwhelmed. We don't need to do it all. That is not the purpose. We've got this, you know, if you take your children to one of those big buffet places, like, I don't know, what are they called? I don't even remember what any of their names are. You know what I'm talking about, though. You don't want them to eat a little bit of every single food that is there. You want them to make a few choices, right? And it's the same thing with this. We're making a few choices. Let your children get involved in what they would like to learn about. You know, at the beginning of the month, look through, okay, here's some things, here's some books we could read, and maybe they choose a country and you focus on that, or maybe you go through all the countries until they find a book that sounds interesting to them, or a poem, or whatever, and just choose a little bit. And that, the little tiny things we do make a lot more of a difference than we think.
A huge difference. Thank you so much, both of you. The things that my kids remember in detail, you know, these silly little things that we did spending time together, I'm so grateful for their memories, because it helps me to learn and remember, oh yeah, it's the little things. You know, it's just the fact that you were spending time with them, doing that with them. And I can relate to the overwhelm too. I'm the kind of person that, you know, if I see Marlene's little, you know, the what are the take fives, you know, I'm thinking, okay, how many hours in a day, how many take fives can I do? That's not the point. It's one, she's like, here, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. That's all you need to do. Just take 5 minutes and listen to this little thing. And I'm like racing through them. I was like, okay, stop. That's defeating the whole purpose. You want to get this little nugget of goodness and then think about it and figure out how to make that part of you and part of your life and part of your family. And this rotation, the thing that's so beautiful is that each year you go back and you do it again. And so you have all these years to go over and over and over it. And I know some moms are panicking, but I've got older kids and we've got to get through it all. No, like what Kristen said, anything they get, every little bit is more than zero. And every little piece of that is another little treasure that you're bringing to their heart, So, but I love that you got your paints out, Ida. I love that you're doing that. You've got to start. We all need to start being okay with things getting a little bit messy, But maybe it's they've got their own sets of things, and they learn they don't get into mom's. These are yours, I remember that we always kept a backpack packed with paper and nice paper, like nice sketch pads. If you give your kids cheap material, cheap art supplies, they're not going to have that much fun with them. You use the cheap art supplies, see how much fun you have with them. It's not enjoyable. You can't, depending on your budget, it's not like you can give them like high end, but take it up a little bit and give them some nice paper and give them a little bit nicer, like watercolor pencils or something like that. But let them pack a backpack with their art things and some snacks and a water bottle. And on days that plan these days, but even if you don't have them planned, on days that are just falling apart, grab the backpacks and go. Just go outside. If it's your backyard or to a park or up in the mountains or something, go somewhere and you sit and do art. And they can run around and be wild and crazy, or they can, if they want to, they can sit and draw or whatever. But you guys are going to have a good day because you're going to fill your heart by doing this little art, little thing. And they're going to run around and have fun and see what you do and maybe want to do that, have a desire later to do that thing and follow you. But we need to do it. We just need to start working on us, start filling our hearts, and it really is going to start impacting our children. We've got to have the courage to do it. We've got to relax a little bit. For me, it's, dropping the OCD-ness, letting go of some of that, and just having fun and inviting them to follow us on this new, fantastic, wonderful adventure that we're going on. So
I can totally relate to art being like an escape and something that can warm your heart, but it also is good for the kids, but those two don't always go together. So I will do it and expect my children to come, and we'll all do it together, and it's mainly for the kids, and whatever I get done, that's great. And then once they go to bed, that's when it's like that's mommy's watercolor time, that's my doodle time, and that's when I can kind of count on that turning out and warming my heart. Whereas when I do it with all of them, it's like a family activity. And if I get something, or if the kids spill the watercolors all over my picture, it's like, well, yeah, that's going to happen. So that's a practical tidbit, is like, if you need it for you, you can do it during like your time.
Yep. Carve out some time.
Yeah, but it's also great to do it in front of them, because then they will want to do that, and it can warm their hearts.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Tasia. I appreciate that. Okay, any other thoughts on that subject? Okay, we're going to move on. My next one was singing, and I brought this up a little bit before. We're going to talk about this a lot more. Like I said, I've got a guest speaker coming to talk to us about music. I'm actually going to meet with her next week, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what she's going to do. But in fact, I could have Kristen do that too, actually. But all my sister-in-laws are very, very talented musically and have a good music background. But here's my point. I was going to go into some of this here in the book, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to share quickly with you, and then see if you have anything you want to share. But music is is a universal language. We know that. It's a language that babies can respond to, that our children, when they're in infants, when they're in the womb, respond to music. I just watched a video when it showed nursing home residents that are non-responsive, non-communicative, and then they added music, put headphones on them with music that they were familiar, family members or whatever shared, you know, this is what they used to listen to, this is what they loved. Listen to music, and they would start, you know, they'd start moving around, they were dancing, you know, listening to the music. Like this older gentleman who would just spend his days like this all day long, eyes almost closed or closed, and head down, you know, and he's up and he's moving. And they take the headphones off of him and they interview him, and he starts answering their questions. He's participating, he's talking with them, and he hasn't talked for a couple of years. And he's saying, oh, some of it is kind of a little bit garbled, you know, but others, like they asked him, well, what kind of music did you listen to? What's some of your favorite? Cab Calloway, or I don't know, is that right? Cab Calloway. And well, what was one of your favorite songs? And he starts singing, and he sings a song, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. That music is something that was in his heart. It was something that he had it all of his life. His children said that he was always dancing and singing, and they'd go out, he'd take them somewhere, and he'd kind of embarrass them. They'd be out in the streets, and he'd be singing, and he'd get them all, he would sing and dance to Singing in the Rain. And they said the kids would end up, they'd be dancing and swinging on light poles, you know, around the poles and stuff. Well, this was all a part of him. So to bring that back, that brought back those memories and those feelings, and even his ability to then communicate. That's beautiful. That tells you a little bit about the power of music. And so for us in our lives, we're going to learn about this and how to use classical music and how to use music in our homes, not to be afraid of that, and how to introduce that. But I need to remind you and myself that singing is a fabulous, wonderful way to introduce that into your home. Part of this video that I watched, the person who was leading it was a TED Talk. And the woman said that 85% of us have been told in our lives by somebody that we couldn't sing or shouldn't sing, or, you know, something that made us hesitant to do that. And that happened with me. I had someone say that I sang flat, you know, and the person was trying to encourage me and motivate me to work on it. But that's not how I took it. I just shut down, and I had been singing to my kids and everything, and I stopped. So I started putting music on, but I wouldn't sing. And I have a child, well, all my kids sing, but I have a child who sings all the time. I mean, she did as a tiny little girl. She would just sing. And I always thought, that's so wonderful. I hope no one tells her ever that she can't or shouldn't, because she will sing all the time with her children, and it'll be such a wonderful thing. You know, that was before I had studied about music and the beauty and power of it. But our homes are a place we can start. Sometimes we feel a little vulnerable, even around our children, you know, or maybe even our spouses, you know, but our homes are a place we can start, and we need to have courage. We could listen to some recordings now. Music is so easy to have access to it. Put on some music that you like and sing along with it. It changes your heart. It's amazing. I mean, it's a true principle that not singing or certain negative rhythms and the absence of a true melody and enough notes, that taking that away hardens hearts. It actually happens. The music of today, you know, there's those really interesting videos. Some of you may have seen them where they've done these studies and shown that there are only a few chords used. The melodies usually are limited to 4 notes instead of all 8 of them. They are repetitious, and they don't usually come home, you know, to that, you know, they've got all the chords and melody, all the notes and everything, and then you have a resolution usually at the end of a song. Many of the songs of today don't do that. They never come home. That does something to our hearts. So this is what our children are experiencing. We need to bring them something different. And we can start with just singing. So this next week, I want to encourage you to sing. Be brave. I've been being brave. I've been starting to sing, and that's just super hard for me, but I've been doing it so that I could ask you to do it. Because I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do, because that's not fair. So this week, start singing. Bring that into your home if it's not already part of it. If it is already part of it, make it more. Make that a bigger part of the time that you spend with your children. Hi, Ruby. But bring that music in. And like I said, we'll be talking more about music and the power of that and how you can use that in your home. So any thoughts about that, about music, about singing, about bringing that to your homes, to your families? Anybody? So sitting back, see, I'm sitting back to say, it's your turn.
So music was actually where I got started with the Well-Educated Heart, because it was super overwhelming at first, but I was like, I could play classical music. So we use Pandora a lot. And so that's where I started, was just playing that in our home during times when the kids were playing nicely, or during we would color. And so that's kind of where we got started. There's a lot now. I use YouTube, and they have a lot of like 3-hour-long playlists of classical music. And so I use those and as well. And so I found some sheet music on Internet Archive too, and I started playing that on the piano. And my daughter and I had one of the classical pieces stuck in our head for like hours after that. And we were just teasing each other that it was so funny. But that's how I got started years ago. That was the first thing I could do. Everything else was overwhelming, but I was like, that's the one thing that I can do and start with.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I want to share too that this overwhelmingness seems to be a common theme at the beginning, but it's just that our hearts haven't been softened to all of this yet, because that same transition has to happen for us. So the more that we spend time learning about these things, and even in the Well-Educated Heart, you do the introductory course, start on that Mother's University, and things start to line up, and you start to see the pattern, and it starts to not be so overwhelming, and it just becomes a natural, kind of a natural flow. I talk about that a lot, this natural rhythm that happens when you're using the arts to cultivate your heart and the hearts of your children. It really is a very natural thing. But in the beginning, because it's new and our hearts, we haven't learned that yet. We haven't cultivated our hearts in that way. It is a little confusing and overwhelming, but that's interesting. And use the thing that's most familiar to you. If out of the arts, you've got storytelling, you have poetry, fine art and music, and then even nature, spending time outside. Pick the one of those that is most comfortable to you and start with that. Start where you're most comfortable. Oh, I meant to say, going back, the idea of letting your children help choose the thing that you're studying is golden. That's what Megan Norp talks about, put your child in the driver's seat. Let them choose, let them be part of the decision-making there, so that they are involved and they have buy-in. So that's another, just easy little tip or trick. I was going to show you this book. This is a very old book that I found in my library, and then they, of course, promptly got rid of it because it's a good book. Does that happen in your library? Like the sweet, precious, wonderful, amazing books disappear. And then you get, forgive me if you like these books, but you get Captain Underpants, or something like that. Something, some literary treasure like that instead of these beautiful things. Anyway, this is a book called The Magic Flute, and it is about the story to the opera, The Magic Flute. And so you go through the story, and it introduces the characters, and it has their theme. So the musical theme, that is that character's theme in the opera, is right there. And you can go pick it out on the piano and let your children become used to it as they read and hear the story of the Magic Flute. And it's just It's wonderful. There are resources out there like that. There aren't lots of them, but Marlene helps bring them to us. Kristen also shared with me this morning, Gateway to the Classics. And that's a website where you have access, again, to some of these beautiful, tender, sweet books and the illustrations. And you can have access to those to read them with your children. And they've even now put in a kind of a calendar, you know, so on Monday you could listen to this one, on Tuesday you could do that one. So for those of you that are starting out and maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, there's a little bit of that structure, just like the rotation that Marlene has at Well Educated Heart. So any questions? We're going to move on to question and answer time. And then like I did last week, I think I'm going to continue. I'm going to just end with story time. And I'm going to read a story. That's what I did at the end of last week, and I enjoyed it. So I thought, I'm going to do it again. And nobody has to stay because I am perfectly happy reading a story to myself. That's fine. But we'll do question and answer first. So anybody have a question or answer that a question that they want to ask that we could all discuss and maybe come up with an answer to? And if you're hesitant to talk, you can always type it into the chat. Okay, so here we have Luzmila. She says, thank you ladies for all you're doing. I'm going to leave the meeting because my kids are very impatient about starting a Lego show. And so I'll plan for this meeting next week. Okay, that was wonderful. It was wonderful having new people here. Sometimes there are questions and comments here. Okay, let's see. Kyra, can you put the link to the story? I'd like to read it during my mom time. Oh yeah, which, are you talking about the story, The Eyes or No Eyes? I'm guessing, yes, probably. Okay, so last week I was much better about my follow-up to this meeting. I typed up an email and I included the things that you wanted from our chat in there. So I may have to type up the story, but I'll look and see if I can find it online. If not, I'll type it up and I will include it in the email so that you can have a copy of that. And I'll tell you where you can find it on the Well Educated Heart too. It's in this volume of her reference library. So it is volume 1, Philosophy. And it is there under the Letter to Children from Charles Kingsley. Letter to Boys and Girls from Charles Kingsley. So that's where it is, but I will make sure that you have that. Okay, and go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, okay, so I shared on the chat a picture. Hopefully you guys can see it. It's of a professor. You guys see it on there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yesterday I watched from the White House a panel discussion about U.S. history. And Ben Carson was involved in that, as well as a bunch of Hillsdale College professors and other professors from different universities and colleges around. And it was probably about 15 people in a panel discussion about why our history is so important to preserve. And this man that I sent the picture of, you need to look him up. Sorry, I have loud kids right now. This man, and I'm going to show you what I'm, well, I can't really show I have my laundry on my bed right now because we had a flood. Anyway, so this man, hold on. Gonna close my door. Shared something at the very end of the history discussion. So I want you to go look up you probably find it on C-SPAN or on YouTube somewhere or something, but go look for this discussion from the White House yesterday. The very end of the discussion, this man said, he quoted Shakespeare, and he talked about how in I think King Henry VIII, that there is a quote, yeah, Trump spoke afterwards, I think. I didn't see his part, but I think he did. Anyway, but this man basically said that good people teach their children. And he said good parents will teach their children this history. Parents need to teach their children, and that was his biggest thing. And he said it has to come from the homes. It has to come from us as a people. And so I love that as a mother, I was inspired watching him and learning from him. And it made me more aware of it's no one else's responsibility. As good as schools want to be, or our officials want to be, or leaders want to be, it comes down to the responsibility of the parents. And I just wanted to share that today because it was really touching for me that this man in academia, you know, just like he was, I don't know if he has a family, I'm sure he must, but he was so adamant at the very end of this whole panel that parents need to teach their children. So look that up at the end, and that's his name. I guess he's quite famous. I don't know who he is, other than I saw him on that thing, but it was a great discussion. It's quite long, I think about 2 hours, but I really enjoyed it because I've been worried about not my children necessarily as far as what they'll learn in history, but their cousins, their peers,
Yeah.
Future spouses. You know, I get nervous about our world, what will happen if we don't take this responsibility serious as parents. So he wasn't just talking to homeschool parents, he was talking to every parent. So I think that has to happen in our homes. So anyway.
Kathy, thank you for sharing that. I saw that come up yesterday and I knew you'd be watching it. I love that. I love that you do that, and I love that you're sharing that. And ladies, mamas, if someone finds that link, will you please email it to me so that I can include it in the Ida? I know Ida's my girl for all that stuff. So if you'll do that. Oh, hold on. I don't have you now. I don't hear you. Did the rest of you hear Ida? Did you hear her when she was talking? Try it again, Ida. We're not hearing you. Are you unplugged?
I turned off my speaker on my thing here.
Oh, there you go.
I can't find the link. I was looking for it yesterday because
Okay.
I want to see the whole thing. So I'll look and see if I
Okay.
can, and I will.
Okay,
Sure.
I have confidence in you. So we'll get that. Thank you. So Kathy, this is, remind me, I want to know about, do you have a washer and dryer in your RV? Amazing, amazing. Truly a home away from home.
It is. We have everything we would need. But convection oven, microwave, but full size oven and range, full size refrigerator, an island. It is like a small condo on wheels. So I'm super spoiled. But yeah, my husband, we are in a campground, and there's some spots that are better than other spots. And so I found a really good spot. So he came home from work at lunchtime and moved us, but he forgot to open the tank for the gray water. If you're familiar with RVs, that's important when you're doing laundry. So he came home and it was flooding out the side of the RV.
Oh.
So it's built to kind of drain in one area, so that if that happens, it's not a big deal. But then this morning he had it all put back together after drying it out last night, and it happened again.
Oh.
Because he forgot to do something else, and he was just like, I'm out of here. So he left it on my bed to dry, and the floor is drying. He'll put it back together tonight. But not a good day for my sweet Rob. But you know, sometimes days just go like that. And
Yep.
you
Yeah,
endure.
well, I'm sorry. Tell him I'm sorry.
He'd be so embarrassed if I was telling that. But yes, I do have a washer and dryer on my bed, and they're my best friends with 7 children. They love me, and I love them. I take good care of these friends of mine.
There you go.
I have anxiety about laundromats, so this is my saving grace. So
yeah,
anyway.
nice. That's so funny. Okay, so any other moments, any questions and answers? There's my question. I contributed my question. Just looking at all your faces to see. Okay, so I'm going to put anything we talked about. I'll put a little link in the or share it on in the email. I put the email address down there. At the very top of the chat. Well, I guess if you didn't come in at the beginning, you wouldn't have it. I also put whoops. Oh, it's okay. Ida, just keep looking. You can email it to me. Or if somebody else finds it.
I have it on my Facebook page. I shared it.
Oh, you
So
did?
I'll go, let me go find it and I'll put it on here.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. And then also on Instagram, I'm on there. Can I just tell you again that putting myself out there was never my intent. This is not what I'm comfortable with. This is not me normally, but I am doing this because I'm learning that there is great value in us talking and sharing and learning together. So so that's what we're doing. So we have this Mothers of Influence group. We get to share what we're learning and discuss those things and motivate each other and support one another, and that's a good thing. So we will continue to do that. Yes, Kyra.
So during this whole meeting today, I kept having this thought, you know, I should do something like this. And I love coming here and getting the ideas and sharing, but I'm like, I think of a couple people that I could invite and do this with. What advice do you have for starting something like this?
Awesome. I love that. There was another Kate DW that was with us. That is the cousin to Kathy Brown's husband, Rob. She was joining us in the beginning for that purpose, to kind of learn how to do her group, because she's in Florida and she has a group of women that have wanted her to do the same kind of thing, answer questions and give support. And so I don't know, I would maybe throw that to the mamas here, you know, what do you get out of it? Like, what are the things you're looking for? What do you want, you know, from a group like this? Or Kyra, you could ask those friends what they would want to do. I know Kristen, my sister-in-law here that's been talking with us today, she has a group of women that she usually works with, which is why she's not usually on here. And she uses Marco Polo, I believe. Is that true, Kristen? So Kristen, and can you just share for a minute about that, just what would be helpful for Kyra?
Yeah, so Marco Polo just seemed like a good way to do it. That was, I was getting ready. I had a new grandbaby I was flying out to see. I did not have time to meet with any of them. So I just did it so that I could do it when I had time and they could listen when they had time. So I started it out just by giving an intro. And then I invited them to share any questions that they had, and they did that, and then I would answer their questions. I also included another homeschool mom in the group that is one of my friends in my neighborhood, and so she would pop in and answer some questions too. And so then I answered their questions, and then I went through and did kind of a different topics that came to my mind. I addressed different subjects. You know, these are moms that really wanted curriculum help, and so I went and addressed different subjects and told what I know about different curricula, how I felt about curricula, what I thought they, you know, don't be tied to curriculum kind of a thing. But I went through topic by topic because I knew a lot of them had questions about that. But it was very much, I had one mom who came to me and asked me a question, and she told me about another mom. And so then I reached out to a whole texting group of my whole neighborhood of moms and just said, hey, I'm going to start this Marco Polo group. If any of you want to join, let me know. Then I had a few other people contact me and say, can you add this person? Can you add this person? And it was pretty low key at first. When all the COVID stuff is over, I do want to start a Mothers of Influence group with that core. But I kind of want to wait and do it in person. I don't know. If this goes on until I'm an old lady, then maybe I should be starting it online or something now. I don't know. But anyway, but it was mostly just finding out what their needs were. We started small and people started joining, and anyway, and Lori, a couple of them added themselves to your Instagram. They're following you on Instagram now.
Oh,
I told them about that the other day, and I noticed a couple of them are there. So if you
okay.
if you don't recognize a couple of names, they're probably my friends.
Oh, that's fun. There's now so many names I don't recognize. So they're coming from all over. So it's kind of fun. So Kyra, oh, and Kristen, I'm guessing you pray also about the things that you're going to share when you're talking on sharing your Marco Polos. So Kyra, talk to them, kind of find out maybe what they're looking for, use that as a jumping off point, and then be prayerful about the topics because that's, for me, that's what I do. I had a friend ask me just last night, sent me a Marco Polo and said, how are you doing this? And how much time does it take you during the week to prepare and everything? And like this week, I actually read through some things, but for the most part, I'm not doing any preparation really, because it's been spirit led and directed. And so somebody here, the stuff that we talk about is for someone that's here, and hopefully multiple people, but that's what you'll find. And that's what I hope happens, is that this group, all of you mamas who are catching the vision and feeling like, okay, I've got a beginning understanding of this, because that's all I've got. I have, like I said, I am a veteran homeschooler. I do have experience. That's what I have. I have successfully homeschooled 4 children from kindergarten through high school, and they are amazing and wonderful. So I have that, but you know, that's it. But
Can I add one more thing?
yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Lori.
yeah, go.
No, so as far as content and praying about it, which I absolutely have prayed about what to do in my Marco Polos, but I don't have time to sit out and write out some little outline. But what I can do, I try and carry a notebook with me, especially when I'm thinking about something like this. And every time a little thought comes to my mind, I jot it down. And then I can take 5 minutes before I go and do it to organize those thoughts. But I try and do that not just with this thing, but with everything else, that jot things down as they come to you, because, you know, the spirit will direct you, but you need to write it down, or at least me, I'll forget it. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so when I put my little blurb about, you know, tomorrow's meeting, and I put the little topics, those are from my notes. Those are the things that I wrote down during the week that just popped into my head, like, okay. And I do the same thing. I come in here, I shut the door, I take a few minutes, I review those notes, and then we start. So pretty simple. Now, Ida, I loved your comment here. So this is some feedback, Kyra, for you. It is really great being able to hear and listen to all the ideas, and being able to talk face to face. So, and even Marco Polo gives that, you know, it's delayed, but you're still connecting, you're still seeing the person and talking, but, you know, or interacting in something like this, like Zoom. And it's amazing that this was created just a little before this, and now we all have this ability to share and communicate this way. So, anybody else? But I love it. This is what should happen, is we have this big group of women, and then it starts breaking off, and you are able to go, and you have these, you know, these other groups, and you start affecting your circles of influence.
I was just telling David that this morning.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Sorry.
Hey, Lindsay? No.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that to David this morning with all this COVID, all the, you know, again, there's always the positive. I feel like having to be on Zoom, we would never all meet together every Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Like that would never, ever, ever happen. We're all over the place.
Right.
I mean, how cool is this that we get to hop on here and talk to each other? I feel like it's bringing us closer together by not, you know, by not being actually, not being able to be together.
I do too. And then I've had some friends contact me and family members that have said, I haven't been able to be on Fridays, but I'm watching the recordings, you know, and I'm learning stuff. And I love, you know, and they'll say, you know, I loved what your friend, you know, Kathy said, or, you know, I love Lindsay's presentation on the notebooks, or, you know, so even the women that aren't able to get together with us in person are able to be influenced, and that's been helpful. Okay, we have some really quiet mamas out there. Just want to make sure, if any of you have anything you want to say or share, we would love to hear from you. If you are more comfortable just being in the background for now, we completely understand that too. We all started out in the background whenever it was that we started. And Ida, again, Ida, you're so sweet. I also never would have connected with people across the country if it wasn't for COVID making it almost normal. Yeah, no, we were chatting last night. The missionaries from our church came by, and they got to actually come inside the house, which was big, but still had to have their masks on, you know. And they were talking, we were going over the Restoration Proclamation, and we were just talking about how amazing and wonderful today is. I mean, there are definitely all the negatives, you know, but there's opposition in all things. And Michael brought up, yep, there is, but opposition you know, we tend to say opposition in all things, that means there was the negative. And he says, but there's a positive. So if there's opposition in all things, there's always a positive too. And look at the positive. Look at all the good things that have come about because of this time. All the children that are at home, the moms that are getting to spend time with their kids, the kids that are coming home and being taught from home. And just families, even if you're still public school, whatever combination, however you're doing that, the kids are still home more with their families than they used to be. They're not off running around the whole time. And I see kids out playing. I see families playing together in the yard or working together. And I love that. I love it. I think that's fabulous and amazing. Families are way more aware of what is going on with their kids' education and what they're being taught. Oh boy, that has been an eye-opener for a lot of people. I talked to a bunch of moms during the week. I've had several Zoom conversations with moms who are panicking and are just, I want out. We're done. We're not doing this anymore. I can't believe this happened. Some parents are so blessed and so fortunate. They're blessed with amazing teachers who are working kind of outside the box and really being amazing heroes, you know, and working with these kiddos. But then there are a lot of others who are experiencing the negative side of this. So yeah, parents are getting to see. Kathy, you're going to say something? When you reach your hand up, I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, another gem from Kathy. No, okay, she's just listening. Okay, well then I'm going to go on and I'm going to share this last story with you. So I'm going to read you a story. It's story time for mamas. Okay, so this story you're probably familiar with. And like I said, if you want to cut out, do it. You're not going to hurt my feelings, I promise. I know you're busy mamas. And then all of this we'll edit it and we will put it up on the YouTube channel and I will do the recap and put that on the email. Yes, Kathy.
I do have something I forgot I wanted to share.
Good.
So before you go into that, one of our moms that used to be on earlier, when we begin doing these meetings, she's doing great at homeschooling. It's great, but she called me this week and said, can you give me any other options for teaching history to my 7th grader and to my kids, you know, more of a natural way to do it instead of having to do formal lessons. So I talked to her about her options, and one of them, another homeschool mom recommended to me, was Beautiful Feet. Do you know much about Beautiful Feet, Lori?
A little bit.
She said it's a Christian-based program or curriculum, I guess, but she says more than just the curriculum. I'm talking about the book lists, because they have wonderful book lists organized into subjects for like history or whatever grade level. And so I went and
timeline too, kind of.
And so I went and looked at that, and I had told this mom I had seen that, and so I said, I've got several books here in my RV, in our little RV library, that I could lend you and see if you'd like them. And so I took a few pictures of the first chapter and sent them to her so she can get an idea. It was about James Madison. It was an old vintage book from the 1960s or 70s. I don't know, it's an old one. But I collect a lot of those because I like those like Jean Fritz and things like that, the author.
Right.
So anyway, so I sent that to her, and then I thought, I wonder what this, I hadn't read it before, and my kids hadn't read it yet. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to read this first chapter and see if it's, because she was asking if it was boring or if it was entertaining for her kids. And it was so interesting. I learned so much about James Madison I did not even know. But I wanted to say one thing I learned about him. And I don't know if you know much about James Madison, but when he grew up, kind of a sickly young boy, and his father had a library of 86, I think he said, books. And by the time he was 11 years old, he had read all of the books in his father's library. And a lot of them were about science, and a lot of them were, you know, history. But there were so many books, and he was just wanting more and more. So he got to go to school and learn from a they had a different back then, you know, that they had to hire a tutor or whatever, and he taught him more. But I was just impressed by the beauty of that. His father's library, and gave the opportunity for his child to learn on his own, just to read and engage in that in his own way, you know, just to pick up a book and read. But he read 86, not children's books, adult books, by the time he was 11 years old, and he wanted more. and later became one of our presidents, and a great man for our country. And so anyway, just a thought, just in first chapter of that little children's chapter book taught me so much. And I'm one that thinks you can learn in a picture book or a scientific, atlas kind of thing, or just whatever, but you can learn in the whole gamut of it. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's great. That's great. You ought to share that name of that book and the author with me so that I can put that in the email as well, if you would. Yeah, I love children's books. I love reading them. They, especially the older ones, because they, well, for one, have you ever looked at like 8th grade kind of curriculum back in the day? These kids learned amazing things. It's usually they can compare to, well, not anymore probably because we've dumbed down things even more, but what they were doing in 8th grade would compare to college level classes and material. So, so if someone said that they, they only got a 6th grade education or something, they're still probably, like our high school ed or something. Ida.
So I teach Chinese students English in the mornings with VIP Kid. Anyways, what's the name of it?
Great Little Madison. Okay, nice. Wonderful. I'll put that down. Thank you.
So to teach these kids, there's reading every lesson. They do a little short reading. And it just struck me today when I was thinking about it and thinking about like well-educated heart, how much there's nothing, like everything is taken out of the stories. Like they're just stripped down to like, and I don't, like whatever, but it just was, the contrast was so, just so evident. Like just these little stories with no morals in them, nothing good. There's no melody, there's no rhythm. Like they're just words. And it reminded me too of like reading some of the early reader books that are just so like painful to hear or read, and how much that is what's happening in education and why it's not inspiring and it's not helping people to love learning or to want to learn more, because it's just blah. It's like taking all the seasonings and all the wonderful things out of food, and then here's your oatmeal with nothing, not even water, just oats. Have fun. And I was just like, yeah. And that was just interesting. I thought about that today and I wanted to share that. So that was all.
I love it. Yeah. Stark difference. And that's what we're feeding to our children and wonder why they don't want to learn things, Such a huge difference if we give them the rich, wonderful stories. The story I read last week at the end of this, Little Miss Sunshine, I just love that story. I think it's one of the sweetest stories. Oh, I know there were two things. So I'm actually going to share a poem first and then story. So library book sales, we still have the price tags on, $5. Where the Sidewalk Ends. We have a few copies of this because my kids love this. So here's a poem, and one of the things we can do is teach our children poetry. And if they memorize poems, that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And they have these great thoughts or funny things or just these rhythms and rhymes running around in their head. Oh, I just interrupt myself all the time, but this is just normal life. So yesterday, I got a book of poetry in the mail, and I'm super excited about it. Poetry is the subject that I don't feel as comfortable with. So I reached out to a friend of my daughter's, one of her college friends who loves poetry and just has a passion for it. So she is preparing something for me to help me learn how to access it better, not be so afraid of it. And I think I told this group that I had an uncle who was very, very dramatic and very into poetry, and he would perform poems for us. And I was young, and he was very, very vibrant, and it was just big and in your face. And I kind of got nervous, and I don't know, it made me feel, it was a little overwhelming. And then when I had to maybe have assignments to write poetry, that intimidated me. I was kind of embarrassed to put my offering out there. But I have found as I actually spend some time with poetry that I actually like it. Now it's very easy to like the silly things, the funny things. And so that might be a thing that you could start off with your kids. But I taught some to my children when they were young. And it's funny because they still remember. They can still recite the things that they learned when they were little. And one of the things we did to make it more fun was we would record them reciting it. And they also had to practice standing up straight and putting their arms at their sides and, you know, having good posture and just not saying all the time. So they did that. And they would, what we added to that was they could use an accent. They could make up an accent and then recite the poem in their silly or funny accent. So to this day, when they're different, and everyone, this is Sarah's, this is Stevie's, you know, and they will recite them with the accent. So, you know, it's just silly. But here's one that you could teach your children. And like I said, it's from Where the Sidewalk Ends, Shel Silverstein. And it's called Dancing Pants. So who's not gonna like a poem called Dancing Pants, right? All right, so, and now for the dancing pants. Doing their fabulous dance from the seat to the pleat, they will bounce to the beat. With no legs inside them and no feet beneath, they'll whirl and twirl and jiggle and prance. So just start the music and give them a chance. Let's have a big hand for the wonderful, marvelous, super sensational, utterly fabulous, talented dancing pants. That's it. But, you know, that'd be fun to memorize, fun to learn. And then that poem just reminded me of one of the Dr. Seuss books that's a collection of stories. And it's the one that has the Sneetches in it. But near the end, it has the pale green pants with nobody inside them. That is one of my favorite stories to tell. So I may tell that. I might tell that next week. I don't know. But one of my favorites. So I love that story. Okay, so then the one I'm going to share with you, you may know already, but it ties in with today. So that's why I'm sharing it. So we will end with this. It's called The Blind Men and the Elephant. There were once 6 blind men who stood by the roadside every day and begged from the people who passed. They had often heard of elephants, but they had never seen one. For being blind, how could they? It so happened one morning that an elephant was driven down the road where they stood. When they were told that the great beast was before them, they asked the driver to let him stop so that they might see him. Of course, they could not see him with their eyes, but they thought that by touching him, they could learn just what kind of animal he was. The first one happened to put his hand on the elephant's side. Well, well, he said, now I know all about this beast. He is exactly like a wall. The second felt only of the elephant's tusk. My brother, he said, you are mistaken. He is not at all like a wall. He is round and smooth and sharp. He is more like a spear than anything else. The third happened to take hold of the elephant's trunk. Both of you are wrong, he said. Anybody who knows anything can see that this elephant is like a snake. The fourth reached out his arms and grasped one of the elephant's legs. Oh, how blind you are, he said. It is very plain to me that he is round and tall like a tree. The fifth was a very tall man, and he chanced to take hold of the elephant's ear. The blindest man ought to know that this beast is not like any of the things that you name, he said. He is exactly like a huge fan. The sixth was very blind indeed, and it was some time before he could find the elephant at all. At last he seized the animal's tail. Oh, foolish fellows, he cried, you surely have lost your senses. This elephant is not like a wall or a spear or a snake or a tree. Neither is he like a fan, but any man with a particle of sense can see that he is exactly like a rope. Then the elephant moved on, and the 6 blind men sat by the roadside all day and quarreled about him. Each believed that he knew just how the animal looked, and each called the others hard names because they did not agree with him. People who have eyes sometimes act as foolishly as these. Anyway, there we go. A story time for mamas. So thank you, ladies, for joining with us. Thanks for the discussion. It was wonderful. We love meeting together with you. We will put the recording of this online as soon as we get that edited and uploaded.